do a quick revise of what we did last time in maybe 5 minutes, then we'll move ahead. Okay.
Okay, sure.
Sure. Let me share my screen. Okay. Can you see my IntelliJ? Cool. So, okay, let's quickly go through the last session. So what we did over here is we created this particular Spark session. Okay, so this is the this is the heart of Spark, which actually helps us build RDDs, data frames, all this stuff. Okay, we'll discuss more about this in the architecture. Then what we did is we have a particular file in JSON format. We tried to read it using the Spark session, and it is basically a data frame. Now, using that data frame, we went through various different functions, such as just printing what to see, what is the content of the data frame, what are the column names in this particular thing, then what is the exact schema of the data frame. Then we went through the limit example, which basically uh, limit 5 will basically take only those many rows which you are giving as the argument over here. In this case, it will take just 5 rows of the data frame. So that way, okay. Now take will also do the same, but take will convert that thing into an array of rows. Okay, so what is data frame? It is basically a collection of rows, right? So this take 2 will basically whatever argument you give will take those many rows and convert into an array of rows. It won't be a data frame anymore. This particular ABC won't be a data frame anymore. Okay. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, yes. I just put on mute.
Yeah. Sure. Okay. So I'll continue. So basically, this is again the same thing. So take and collect, this kind of operations basically bring the whole data, whatever you are asking for from the data frame, it will collect all those things and bring it to the driver memory. Now I will explain what exactly is driver memory in the architecture. It will be more clear to you. Okay. Then this is just simple stuff. Okay, so basically apply is a Spark operation, sorry, is a Scala syntax where you access a particular element of an array, similar to any normal array in any programming language, right? So basically accessing the index, I mean, element by the index. That's it. Then we can create data frames manually also by hard coding the values over here. And so basically there's 2 other steps, right? Then, okay, now to see how many rows are present in the data frame, we can use count function over it, okay? And these are basically basic operations such as select. So let's say out of 10 columns, we want to select 1 column or maybe 2 columns, then we can use select command. Now remember, all these things will always return a new data frame. It's never the same data. Whenever you do data frame dot select, that particular data frame won't change. Data frames are immutable. Okay. Then right, I'm using column simple ops. Okay, so basically we can perform different operations, simple operations like division, multiplication, maybe string operations. This particular function. So what this function is, it's called call. So what we say is this is a column. With that column, do some operation. So that way we can specify what operations we want. Okay? This is a quite useful thing. You will definitely face this in future.
Oh, I have a question. So
sure.
Con is the call is for call. Is it a function that already inside Spark, right?
It's a Spark concept, not a Scala one. It's a Spark concept.
Oh,
so
okay.
When you say call, it means it refer. Okay, so when you say data frame dot select, inside it you have to use call. If you use outside, then there's no point of it. So when you say call, it means that whatever data frame you're referring to, it's one of the columns of that particular data frame. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So column should be associated with a data frame. You cannot use it independently. So basically, yeah.
So it's different from CSV that. Hang on, I'm a little bit lost here.
Sorry. I mean,
it is divide the column by 2, right?
Correct. Yes. So basically, if the value of, let's say we have a data frame, let's say we have a column of, let's say 5, 6, and 10 values. So it will just divide it by 2 and give you a new column. Actually, it will give you a column with this name. Okay, let me just quickly bring up the shell so that we can. Just bring it here only. Try playground. Spark Hadoop, then Spark Shell. So if you see cars, yeah. So this is the data frame, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So when you say acceleration, sorry. Yeah. So when you say acceleration by 2, it will basically give you 12 by 2, 11.5 by 2, 11 by 2, those things. You just run quickly that particular.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a very common operation which you need, like right? Select acceleration and acceleration by 2. Right. So if you see, we have selected 2 columns, acceleration and acceleration by 2, and these are the values. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the thing. Okay. And similarly, the next one is alias. So if you see, this name is not really useful to us. I mean, it's not very user friendly. So you can actually just simply use an alias over it by just covering this with the parenthesis and dot as. So whatever name you give over here, it will just come up. I mean, it's basically the same thing with different, what do you call it? Show you quickly. Yeah. All right. So I have given the name as half acceleration. So it is coming like this. All right. So you can just further use this name for different operations. Right.
Yes, I'm good.
So, yeah. Cool. So next is basically adding a column. So let's say we have 10 columns in our data frame and we want to add a new one with some value. So maybe it can be just the same value, or maybe we want to just add 2 columns together and add that extra column over here. So that's how it works. So with column will help you add an extra column, okay, with whatever value you want. So the syntax is the name of the column and the value you want to put in that. Okay. Right. Now, this, if let's say you want to rename a column, right? Let's say you did this operation, then you forgot that I have to use an alias, or maybe you just want to avoid using underscores, for an example, for some reason. So you can use with column rename. So that will just rename a particular column. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
And drop will basically help you delete a column. So let's say you have an extra column, you don't want to use it, right? So you can just delete a column, right? So out of 10, maybe you want 8 columns. So this 2 columns you want to drop, then you just mention them and it will just simply drop the column. Okay. Right. I think till here we have covered in the last part. Okay. So let's move ahead with filters. Okay. So what exactly is
First,
filter operation?
tell me about the structure of Spark, because I think it might help me understand more of the things that I'm still confused about.
See, only the filter and union is only left as the basic operations.
Okay.
So yeah, so it will hardly take 10-15 minutes according to me.
Okay.
Then see, the architecture part will max to max take half an hour, and I'm planning that we will go through this particular filter and solve a very simple problem together, so that it will actually gets you hands on that. Then we can move ahead with the I mean, these all things are for the next session. Okay, so
Awesome.
yeah, so this is till here. We'll just try to cover only this much, and we'll move on to architecture. Okay. All right. So what is a filter function? So let's say you have a data frame of 400 rows, right? Now let's actually go through this. See, in this particular data frame, if you see, we have a origin column, correct? Where you can see USA or Europe or those kind of things will come over here. So let's say you want to actually find what are the cars, what is the car details from only USA, right? There's a very basic operation like in SQL where you do where command. Basically, it's exactly like where command. So select star from this table where my column is equal to this, right? I mean, in SQL syntax. So this is the same thing. So the first one is that if you see the syntax is basically data frame dot filter, then you say which column and what value you want.
Oh, okay.
Okay, right? It's as simple as that. So I really like this particular thing because it's actually readable. So
Oh,
this,
so you have to get the three equal side, right?
right. So in case of Spark Scala, I'm not sure about Python, but in case of Spark Scala, we have to use 3 signs, and this is the sign for not equal to.
Oh, okay. I see.
Yeah, and greater than is but simple. So we'll actually I have put all the examples, so you can refer this one.
Yes.
So yeah. So if you see initially the cars.df, let's say how much count it had. You're able to see the screen, right? Full screen, right? So it has around 406 rows, correct? Now what I'll do is I'll just try to filter this thing. What is this filter doing? The exact same thing that I told you. For the column origin, this column equal to USA. All right. So if I do this, now this new data frame will have only the rows corresponding to USA. See, now it's having just 254 rows, correct? So this particular data frame won't have anything other than USA. So if you do show this, we had this particular Europe over here, you will see only US. You will find only USA cars over here. So how is this useful? I mean, let's say, this is a fairly common thing which you will use that. Let's say you have a big data set and you want to collect a data for few particular columns matching to your parameters, right? Similarly, this is the not equal to, exactly the same thing. Now see, what I did over here is data frame dot filter for my column origin not equals to USF. So this particular thing dot count, if you do 152. So basically we had total of 406 rows. Out 54 were for USA, 152 belongs to non-USA. Okay. See, the origin over here is Europe, Japan, all the rest of the countries.
Yes.
Okay. Any doubt over here?
No, I'm good.
Good. So let's move on. So, okay, now this is another common use case is chaining of filters. So let's say you want to have multiple operations, right? It's so let's say you want to have something like it should be from USA and my horsepower should be greater than 150. So if you see there's a column called horsepower over here. So you want all the powerful cars. So such as all the powerful cars from USA. So if you use this particular thing, this is called chaining of filters, where you see I have put one filter over here, then another filter over here. You can put as many filters as you want. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Hang on.
Yeah. And yeah.
So
Tell me.
if I want more filter, I just dot filter and keep going.
Yes. Keep going. Correct. And there's another way to do this also. You can just use and over here. That is also there. So,
oh, I have a question. So is
correct.
This method is for data frame or data set?
Yes, this is only for data frames and data sets.
Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah.
Oh, so data frame and data set, they share the same method.
Correct. So see, data set is basically a data frame with more well-typed, what do you call it, data types.
Oh,
okay.
What do you mean by data type?
It means a string, double, long, those things.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So basically data frame, if you see in data frame, you can have multiple columns of any type Okay. In data frame, the scheme, if you have seen a schema, right? Let me just show you one.
Mm-hmm.
Let it run. Actually, we'll have a session on data sets also, so do not worry about that. Yeah. So what happens over here is, if you see this double, this long, all these things are data types, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you see here, the columns are having a data type, and we can add as many columns as you want, right? But in case of data set, there is a restriction for that also. Hardly, if you put any extra column with different kind of data type, it won't take it, and it will tell you it's an error. So that's a very specific use case which you might not need, but yeah, we will explore the use cases in that session. All right.
Sorry, can you say it like, so if in the data set, if you put like a data type that outside of the defined, then it won't take?
It won't take. That's the thing. So let's say, yeah. So let's say you're having a property called person, and you want the data frame, each and every row should match with the person's values. Now let's say person value is having name, first name, last name, and gender. Okay. Now if you put something like height, then probably that data set will tell you it's an error. So we'll explore that. So I mean, it's very abstract right now, right? So and
I
yeah,
just have
data sets.
one
Sure.
more question. So, you know, like in data frame, currently we can infer schema, and the infer schema is like, from what I understand, is they take a sample of row and then they will use it as the schema. But so in data set,
Correct.
if they don't use any, do they use infer schema then, or they have to scan like the whole table to get the exact schema?
Correct. So in you need to specify the schema. That is a prerequisite.
Oh, okay. So,
Yeah, I mean, that's very hardly typed. I'll explain all those things. I mean, the use case is basically something related to OOPS concept. So basically, it's a kind of object-oriented programming.
okay.
Yeah, so don't worry about it. I mean, I also had planned a OOPS example for you in Spark, such as what I was planning is I'll show you a type, exactly the same example which I said. Let's say we have a column data frame of type people. So people, I will define people as a class, and I'll try to use it in that data frame. So we'll go through it step by step. Okay.
Yeah,
I mean, there's a
because
lot of things.
yeah, because the thing is like we have in the, my company is causing a little bit trouble because, you know, like data science set, like they have a lot of columns, so we cannot like define each schema by hand, so we have to use infer schema. But then if infer
Correct.
schema only like get a sample of column, then the schema could
I
be,
got it.
yeah.
Right. So Jen, so basically, in fact, in my use case also, data frame is the most usually, I mean, most popularly used. So
Okay.
data set is a very specific use case which you might not need. So
Okay.
yeah, so actually you should, if you're going for ML purposes, machine learning purposes, then data frame is the correct one to use.
Okay, I see.
Okay, because data frame is more flexible than data set, and for ML use cases, I'm pretty sure that's the case.
I see. But you have to define like
But
a schema, right?
so data frames can actually infer the schema mostly, but yeah, if you want, you can define the schema as well.
I see.
Yeah, I'll maybe show you an example in the later sessions. I'll just note it down.
Okay.
Schema example. Okay. All right. Fine. Where did we reach? So this chaining of filters is clear to you. Let me just show you the example quickly. So if you see, you can have multiple filters in a single, what do you call it? Single row itself. I mean, single line. And when I say line, okay, the Spark, if you, there is no particular, I mean, Spark is independent of the spaces. Okay. So what I mean is, let's say you are writing something like this. Okay. This is equivalent to writing something like this. And okay, let's remove that. So this two, just copy it. Yeah. So these two lines are particularly the same thing. Okay. So what I meant is, if you have worked on Python, Python is very, what do you call it, strict about spaces, right? Spaces and tabs. But in case of Scala, the spaces doesn't matter. You can keep as much spaces as you want. I mean, if I put over here also, this whole thing is exactly same as this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so yeah, but that depends on how you want to write it. Like what I do is I prefer writing like this. Column. Let's say I have multiple filters, right? So if I have something like this,
Mm-hmm.
now this is not so readable. So, but if you put something like this, next line, the next line. So it's actually quite readable right now. So you say the data frame, filter it by USA, then filter it by horsepower greater than 150.
Oh.
I prefer this kind of syntax. I mean, that's up to you.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
Okay.
it's very easy to read.
Correct. And it's actually, yeah, correct. So if you put this thing, if you run this thing over here, sometimes, okay, in shell you have this problem that if the formatting is not correct, then you have to use paste. I'll tell you later on. But yeah, so if you use this particular filtering, now if you see, now you see all the USA cars with horsepower greater than 150, correct? Now you won't see anything less than 150 over here. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Let's quickly move on to the next one. This is done. Right. Distinct values. Now let's say you want to see how many countries do you have in origin, right? How do you do that? Let's say you have a data frame. You want to see how many distinct countries do we have in this particular data set, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what you do is, let's say this is my data frame. From that, I'll select only origin, and then I'll do distinct. So this particular function is there, correct? This particular function will just choose what are the distinct values for the chosen columns.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what? Okay. So you can use multiple columns. Let me just show you so that you'll have an idea.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Right. Now, if you see, in this whole data set, we had only 3 unique countries. I mean, origin: Europe, USA, and Japan. That's it. So we have only cars corresponding to these 3 countries. Okay. Now, let's say you have a use case where you want, let's say you, okay. So basically this particular select operation, you can choose as many columns as you want, and you can use distinct, such as, let's say in this case, I want to see maybe cylinders. Okay. Now, what will this particular operation do? Let me just format it and this way. It's more easier to read, right? Yeah. So if you see, first what I'm doing is I'm selecting only 2 columns. Out of that, when I call distinct over it, it will see what are the distinct values for these 2 columns together.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you have, let's say for origin, you have USA, comma, 3 cylinders, USA, comma, 4 cylinders, and USA, comma, let's say 3 cylinders again, right?
Mm-hmm.
This particular operation will return only this much. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So basically distinct over 2 columns. That's how it, I mean, should be clear, right? Okay. So let's move on to union. So what is, okay. Now you might have a use case where you have 2 different, after some computations, you're getting 2 data frames. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now you want to append these 2 data frames into a single data frame. Let's say your first data frame is having 10 columns, the second data frame is having 20 columns. You want a third data frame, they should have all these things together in 30 columns, sorry, 30 rows.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let's say I'll show you actually. So this is another, this is another JSON file. So this more cars.data frame is having around only two rows. It's fairly small. Anyways, okay, this particular data frame is having 2 rows. Okay, now the actual data frame cars.df is having 406 rows, right? Now let's say you want to append this data frame onto this so that the end result should have 408 rows. So that is done through union operation. So what is the use case? So I mean, let's say you have two pipelines where you're computing one thing for a particular uh, parameter, then you're computing another data frame for a particular parameter, and at the end you want to append these two results together. Okay, so that is the use case for union. Now, you have any doubts over here for the union thing? Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, you have any doubts over here for the union thing?
No, I'm good. I'm just trying to read because I think the letter is a little bit too small for me. But I think it's
Sure,
also
sure.
similar to SQL. Yeah. It's so fantastic. Yeah, it's really good. Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's similar to SQL.
Yes. So do
Yeah, and
you have like inner join, outer join, stuff like that, like SQL?
correct. So that's more, I mean, that will cover in the next session. So if you see, I have joins, group by, and sorting aggregations in the next session. Okay.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I'll save it into the
Yeah,
next.
correct. Actually, join and union are different actually, right? So when you do a join, the number of columns and rows can increase, correct? So when you have, sorry?
But union, like you get the data from the first table and multiply it with the second table, right?
No. So, okay, union is just addition of rows. There is no operation, nothing. So if you have 10 rows from the first table and 20 rows from the second table, when you say table 1 dot union table 2, it will give you all the rows together.
Yes, that's what I meant. Yes.
Yeah, so multiplying is basically join. So when you do a cross join, it will multiply all the rows. So if you have 10 and 20, you should get 200 rows, right? So that's how join works, right? We'll go through it as well in the next session. But yeah, for now, union is basically, let's say this, okay, see this particular case actually. So you did some computations and you had cars.df, but later on you did again some computations and you have more cars.df, right? Now, basically you want to merge these two into a single data frame. So that's what all cars df is. So cars data frame dot union more cars df. So it will give you a count of 408. Okay. A simple use case, but yeah, it's sometimes very important. Now, one thing to note over here is union can be done only when the number of columns and the schema are same, right? Now, let's say I have two data frames with, let's say 4 columns and another data frame having 10 columns. You cannot just union it, correct? I mean, just think about it. So it should have the same number of columns and the same schema. Okay. Yeah, I mean, otherwise union anyways is not possible. You cannot add two tables if they are not in the same format, right? Yeah, okay. So that's all for union. Okay, we 30 minutes, right? So let's try to solve this problem in another 10 minutes. I mean, you just tell me that maybe you don't have hands-on right now, so maybe we'll just go by your logic and I'll just write the code, okay? Or maybe you want to, or anything is fine.
Yes.
Right? So let me just put some context. Let's say we have cars.df.show. Okay. Just look at this thing. Just look at the schema once. So these are my columns, these are my data, right? Now the first question is, find the number of cars in Japan.
Yeah, so
Right?
has data frame dot filter open parenthesis car what is the column for origin? Car origin. Yes.
Correct.
Equal
Yes.
3 sub equal USA.
It's for Japan, right?
Oh, equal Japan. Yes. Okay.
Correct. Yeah. So Japan. Then I want how many cars are there actually.
Oh,
So this will basically, when you do this thing, it will do nothing but it will just give you a new data frame
oh,
where you're
that's
having.
you have to dot show, right, to show the number.
Sorry.
Oh, in the line you have to dot show to show the number.
No, actually that shows give you the first 20 rows. It won't tell you the actual number.
Oh, okay. Oh, so you have to select the string then.
No. So it's a simple one. So it's you have to just tell count. That's it, right?
Oh, okay. Counts. Yes.
Correct. So it will give you basically 7. So there are 79 rows in this particular data frame corresponding to Japan. That's it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Right. The next one is okay. Now, how many unique car names are there? So basically, you have to tell me in this particular data frame for this particular name column, how many unique cars are there? Correct. So if you see, there is a repetition of names as well. Correct.
Mm-hmm.
So I want that. So there are total 406 rows in this column, but I'm sure that the number of distinct cars would be less, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the question is, how many unique car names are there in this particular?
Okay, so cars data frame dot filter con name.
Mhm.
Yes. So dot distinct. Hang on. How many? Yeah. Dot count. How many car? Right.
Yeah. How many cars are there with unique names? So basically, number of unique names.
Oh, so dot distinct. Dot count then.
Correct. Perfect. Okay. So name of string is not a boolean.
Where you spell counts from.
That's the thing of what is. Just look at the error. And okay, what exactly does filter do?
Hello. Hello. Hello.
So what I'm saying is, so what exactly does filter do?
It filter out the column, right?
So filter actually goes through each column and sees whatever condition you have given is correct or not, right? It's something like if else. So if my condition is correct, it will select the row, otherwise not. Correct?
Mm-hmm. Oh, so I
Yeah.
need filter in here, right?
If you use filter over here, filter will always take something Boolean. So what is Boolean? Boolean is 1 or 0, right? True or false.
Mm-hmm.
So, but here you are given a column.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a type string. So that is the error over here, that this filter operation actually expecting something, some condition, but you are given a string. Name is a string, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the fix is basically it should be select,
Oh, I see.
right? Because what select does, it will just select whatever column you have given. Now in this case, you have given the column called name. It will select that name. Over this, it will call distinct. Then it will call how many rows are there. Correct. Now this will actually work out. This is correct.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Right. I mean, let it run. We'll just go through the. I mean, this is clear to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay. So let's go to the next one. Okay. Now this is might be a tricky one, but let's try. So find the value of this particular thing. Okay, this is some formula. This is a random formula which I came up with. I mean, just for the exercise purpose. So there are 4 columns, right? Acceleration, cylinder, displacement, horsepower, all these things, correct? So what I want is for the car named this particular thing from the origin USA in the year this. So if you see there's a year column also, right?
Oh, okay. So you just
So
use multiple filter.
correct. So for this all properties, you will find a particular car, and for that particular car, I want this value. Okay.
Yes.
So
So,
might take
yeah,
time,
so
but
basically we just dot filter and list down the condition, like 3 condition, and then the
correct.
dot show, I think.
So okay, so correct. Let's go one by one. So you're saying that we'll do this particular thing is name, this is origin, and this is year, right? So let me just quickly write over here itself. Cars.df dot yeah, tell me. So it's filter and column of name.
So yes, name is equal to Chevrolet.
Yep. Right. Okay. There's something else. This will come outside. Right. This is the first filter. Then what you do is the second filter.
Yes.
Filter
So that's
again. It's origin, right?
yes is equal to USA.
Let's see. Cover them with quotes. Then the last filter. So that's for the column called
Here.
year, right? Let me just quickly check it. Yeah, it's capital Y. Yeah. Right. Then that is equal to basically this. Okay. Right. The sum error over here. This is okay. The call should take only the name, and column is equal to USA. Okay. So let's try this. I think it is stop. Okay, let's see. Okay, for this particular thing, this we started some error. Just a minute, it's taking some time. Here. Now we have cars. Let me just quickly show this one. Right. Now we'll run our whatever we proposed, right? This particular thing. Okay. Now this is the data frame it has returned. Let's do a show, right? Now this is until here you're correct. So it's returning only one row with this name, this origin, and this year, right? Now what we want is this. Let me see what I asked. This plus this plus this, right? This plus this divided by this plus this. Now, how would you do that?
Oh, you just apply the math formula, right? So you select those 2 columns and then you divide, right? So rest one dot select
Okay. Let's go over here itself. So, okay. Now, one thing you have to notice, this will return some data frame, right? So let's say data frame 1 is equal to this. Now, whatever you will apply, you should apply over this particular thing, correct?
Oh, okay.
Right. So if you do over cars or DF, it won't make sense because you have not done the filtering over there. Correct? Right. So you have done the filtering for df1. So you have to apply all your things over df1. Okay. Right.
So,
Now, yeah. Tell me.
so the
Tell me.
F1, I have to select column. What is the column that we need to divide? I cannot see the.
Okay. Let me how to increase over here. Okay. Let me see.
Yeah, that's
How
all
to
right.
increase this. Okay. Fine.
The
So
acceleration.
plus cylinders divided by displacement into
Acceleration.
1.
Yes.
So basically, so acceleration, right, plus column of cylinder, right, cylinders, right. Now, this two things divided by again column of displacement into horsepower, right. I mean, there's a lot of things. Right? Now this plus this divided by this plus this, and since mathematically we have to cover this by parentheses, otherwise this, yeah. So otherwise this will divide this first, right? According to Badmat's rule. So if you do this thing, let's see what happens. This and this, I believe we should also let's be on the safer side. Let's cover this as well. Okay, so what we're doing is 2 columns addition, 2 columns multiplication, then we are finally dividing it. Correct? See, we have one, fine, got it. So let's run this. Now we have df1. What is df1? Is a single row. Then we want to apply this particular thing over df1. Let me do just show over here. Now this will give you the this value. So yeah, this is correct. Now how would you get this value into a variable, right? This is still in a data frame, correct? Let's say you want to calculate something from a data frame and finally take that value into your actual function. So let's say you got something over here. Now you want to, let's say the variable is called, let's say formula, maybe formula result. Okay, so maybe you should get something like this 666. The value is 6 is something. You want something like this, right? Yeah. How do you get this thing over here? Now you have this in a data frame. You cannot just simply say data frame dot show, right? Show will give you this value, correct? But you cannot use this thing in the further operations like a simple variable having this value.
Can we put the value for this and let the value we want to calculate equal to this value? So
Can it
value A equal data frame 1 dot call whatever it is.
Correct. So let me tell you. So the thing what you want is collect. So what collect does, right? So what collect does is it breaks the data frame and returns you an array of rows. That is what you want. Correct. So instead of show, if you do a collect, what we'll get is we'll get an array of row. Now if you see, you can actually see the value over here simply. Right? Yeah. So now to access this thing, let's say we are collecting this value in a variable called array of rows equal to this. Now this array of rows dot apply, or maybe just simply 0 will give you a row, then again a 0 will give you the actual value. Now you can use this particular thing as you want. This equal to this. Okay.
Oh, wait. So first you do the collect. So
correct.
You do the collect before you put the value for it.
Right. So what I did is, this is your normal operation. When you do a collect, you have to put it in a variable, right? Then this, what is this variable? It's an array of rows. Now we want to choose the first row with the first value. So this is what I'm doing. First row with the first value. Right? Right. Okay. So you can assume a collect will always return you something like a matrix. I mean, like a 2D array. You have an array of rows. Okay. So the first row, sorry, the first row and the first, I mean, here we're having the simple column. That's why it's, I mean, you're not able to, might be it's a bit confusing that what is this particular thing, but you can consider this like a table. So, or a matrix where you can have multiple things. Whenever you collect, it will give you array of rows and each row will correspond to this. Okay. All right. Yeah, that's, I mean, you got this point, right? Any doubt for this question?
Yeah, I'm good. I think I'm good.
Good, good. Right. So now, right. Okay. Now this will cover, okay. So what you have to do next one is find the average horsepower of the cast DF. So if you do cast DF dot show, that is the last one. Let's do quickly. You see this horsepower, right? Now what you need to do is you have to find for this particular data set, what is the average value of the horsepower, correct? So obviously there is a direct Spark method for this, which we will cover in the next session on that under aggregations part. But I want you to do it. Just think over it. How can you do it in whatever we have learned till now? So that it will help you in a little bit of syntax. Yeah, just think over it. You have a data frame, you have a column, then how will you get the average out of it?
Sorry, I cannot hear you clear. Can you say it again?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, what I'm saying is you have this column called horsepower. How will you find the average value of horsepower? So what is average value? Is just a summation of the whole thing divided by the count, correct?
Oh, so first you have to collect to get the array of value, and then you use the function average, right, to get the average of the array of value.
Correct, correct. So right. So you have the resources. Just try to code it yourself. Okay, whenever you get time.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, don't use the data frame. There is a direct operation for data frame which gives you the average value in just single line. But try to use it using normal Scala operation, as you mentioned. Collect, then use Scala operations. Find the average.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so I think Spark wise, I mean, operations wise, we are done for this session. You have any doubts for this particular things what we did till now?
No, I'm good.
Cool. Okay, so let's jump into Spark architecture now. Okay. All right. There might be new keywords for you, but let's try to go through it again, and we'll go. We'll just revise it again.
Yes, if I have new keyword, I'll stop you. Don't worry.
Sure. Okay, so let me just read by chance whiteboarding thing. Okay. So right now, see, the Spark basically follows a master-slave architecture. What is master-slave architecture? It's basically you have a very costly machine. Okay, so in general, in master-slave architecture, what happens is you have a master machine which tells different other machines what to do. Okay, so like let's say we have a sum of, let's say, 1 to 100. So this particular driver will tell this first executor that you take values from 1 to 25, do the sum. You take values from 26 to 50, do the sum. You take values from 51 to 75, do the sum. You take the values from 75 to 100 and do the sum. Okay, something like that. I mean, depending on the operation, this particular thing will actually drive your code. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. So all the major operations, actual operations, Spark operations are done in these executors. Okay, so basically this is the master and these are the slaves.
Mm-hmm.
So the slave machines are also, I mean, this executor, there can be multiple executors in a slave, but yeah, we'll explore that later on. I have a Spark model thing planned, but for now, let's assume each uh, each slave will have an executor which will do some operation given by driver. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
right. Now, why is this important? See, a driver is there, that is fine. Now, let's say we have given an operation, but due to some reason, this first machine went down.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what will happen is instead of 4 parallelism, we will do in 3 parallelism. So that will slow down your process, but it will never break the process. You're getting it? So let's say you want to do a sum of 100. It was happening in a time period of, let's say, 4 seconds. But now, if one machine is gone, let's say this machine went down,
Mm-hmm.
right? Only these 3 machines will do the computation. So this might take maybe extra 2 seconds, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, right. So this is the main concept. But if the driver goes down, right? If the driver goes down, your whole Spark job will fail, because this is the main heart of Spark which is driving the things. Now, if this fails, your whole Spark job will fail. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is the reason when I was telling you about take and collect. Okay. So let's say your this driver is having, let's say 4 GB of memory. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But you called a collect function over a data set of, let's say, 5 GB, right? What will happen is it will try to collect the data of 5 GB into 4 GB, and finally it will fail with out of memory result, and your Spark job will fail.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. So what do you do to address the situation?
Correct. So basically collect and all these things, so your major operations should be done at executor level. When your uh, when your result set is very less, in that case only you should call collect function. Otherwise you should always go for a workaround thing. I mean, that depends on the situation. There is no exact uh, value for this. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, it depends on the situation. I can help you through that, but yeah, there is no particular rule that you have to do. Ideally you should avoid calling collect as much as possible. Okay, for this example, as you can see over here, for the problem set, we did not call the collect at the starting itself, right? Otherwise, it could have broken the system. But what we do is we brought the thing into the minimum possible level,
Mm-hmm.
only one row, then we called the collect.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's the thing you have to take care. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, right. Okay, let's move ahead. So this is just an illustration of how a master slave looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And let's move on to the actual implementation of Spark. Pointer, right? Okay, so this is the actual architecture of Spark. So whatever you saw in the last thing gets converted into this thing. I mean, this is just an illustration. This is the actual architecture. You'll find this same diagram on the Spark documentation. So this is the driver thing, and these are the executors. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, now let me take you step by step from the point we submit a Spark job. Okay. All right. So let's say you have some code ready with you, and you say, go and submit my program. Okay. Now what happens over here is you have a particular code. This code is first sent to the driver.
Mm-hmm.
The driver gets the code. And if you see, in every code, you will find this thing. I told you this is the heart of the Spark. So this is basically a Spark session, which internally contains, internally has Spark context. So this
Mm-hmm.
is the main thing which creates RDDs, data frame, what parallelism you want, all those things. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the entry point to Spark. Without this, it's just a simple Scala program. Okay. So this is the entry point to Spark, right? Correct. Now, this particular Spark context. Okay, right now what will happen is only the driver program is running and these two worker nodes, basically the slave nodes, are just sitting idle. Okay, nothing is happening over here at this point of time. Okay, so the driver is going through what code you have sent. Now what is the next step? The next step is where the okay, it's loading. Fine. So what does the Spark context do is, for the rest of the code, whatever you have sent to the driver, it goes to the code and it creates a DAG. What is DAG? DAG is a direct acyclic graph. Okay, so what it does is, very small example. Let's go to the filter one. Yes, this, right? So let's say in this case, what is the DAG for this thing? It says that cars.df step 1 will be read cars.df. Then next step is do a filter for USA, filter for USA, then do a filter for horsepower greater than 150. Okay, so what it does is it creates a graph where the first step is this, second step is this, third step is this. Okay, I mean, this is a very small example, but this is how it creates the whole DAG from end to end, from the starting point to the last point of your code. Okay, and this DAG is basically converted into three things: job, stages, and tasks. Okay, now what is a job? So whenever you create an RDD, okay, these things are done. Now let's say you do dot count. All these operations are basically transformations. Okay, there are two type of methods: transformation and action in Spark. Okay, now what is transformation? It actually modifies the data, like filter or union. All these are transformations. But what is an action? Action is something when these steps are actually triggered, right? Are you following then?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So what happens is it will create this DAG. That is fine. But when does it get executed? It executed when it faces a action. Okay. So count is an action, take is an action, and there are various show is an action. So until you call an action, this will just keep on creating the DAG and it won't actually process anything. Okay, Spark is lazily evaluated. This is a particular concept that it will just try to create the DAG and it will work on the DAG when you call an action. Okay. Now, whenever you call an action, from the last action to this action, that is a job. Okay. Now, each job, depending on your actions, are converted into stages. If you see this diagram, each job is converted into stages. Now, each stage is converted into tasks. Okay. I will give an example of stages and tasks in a later session where we'll actually go through a group by operations I'm thinking about. But for now, just see that when you call an action, a job is triggered. Each job is converted into different stages, and that stage is further divided into smaller tasks. Okay, so basically this task is the smallest piece of operation that a executor can work on. Okay. Okay. So once you have these tasks, okay, I'll just quickly repeat. The driver gets the code, Spark context is created. The Spark context basically calculates what is job, stage, and tasks. Once this is done, depending on the data, this Spark context will ask the cluster manager, okay, that according to the task, it will calculate that, let's say it needs some kind of resources. Now let me define what is a resource and cluster manager first. So resource is basically the number of cores and the memory. Okay. So let's say, for example, your data set is of size 100 GB, but your whole machine is of size just maybe 10 GB. Okay, then the cluster manager will say that no, it cannot be done. Okay, so that is the thing. So cluster manager is nothing but a simple process which keeps a track of what memory and cores are free on each node.
I have questions. So a cluster manager tool would be like Zookeeper, right?
Cluster managers, no. So Zook, okay, now this particular Spark architecture doesn't have anything like Zookeeper, but yes, you can consider cluster manager is a simple process, something like Zookeeper, which is running on the driver machine itself. Okay,
Oh.
and what it does is it keeps on checking on every node what is the resource left. It will say that this first worker node will have maybe 10 GB free, the second will be having maybe 4 GB free, that way. Okay, so this basically sees all the resources at every point of time. Okay? Right now, okay, now the next, so basically till here the Spark context has created all the tasks. Now based on this task, it has calculated some resources, okay, which it needs. Now what we'll do is it will go to the cluster manager and ask cluster manager, is this much amount of resources available? Now if the cluster, so at that point of time cluster manager will go to the worker nodes and see if the amount of resources that is being asked is available or not. Okay, now if it is available, then cluster manager will actually approve the job. Okay, now when it approves, two things happen. The first one is the cluster manager will go ahead into a slave node or a worker node and launch the executor according to given resources. So what, okay, I'll just quickly tell you what exactly is resource. So resource is basically memory and cores. Okay, so the Spark context will ask the cluster manager something like, give me 3 executors will with each memory having 5 GB and 5 cores, that way. Okay, now if it is available, cluster manager will go ahead and launch those executors. So this particular thing which you're seeing as executor, it's launched in the second step in this slide. Okay, okay, I mean it will take a bit to grasp, but we'll recap it again. So the first thing is it is getting converted into tasks and all those things. Then based on those tasks, Spark context will go and ask cluster manager, is the resources available? If it is available, cluster manager will go and launch these clusters. Okay, sorry, launch this executors. Now this executor actually does all the work for the operation, like filter or union, whatever it is. These are the ones which actually does all the work. Now once the executor are launched, the driver, this particular thing, will send the tasks, if you see. Okay, the next step is the driver will send the tasks. So let's say, okay, now if you simply see over here, this is a bit confusing. Let's say you have 10 tasks. Okay, in this case, in this diagram, let's say you have calculated only 4 tasks are there, correct? So the driver sees that there are 2 executors. It will send two tasks each. So parallelism is maintained. Okay, so it will try to maximize the parallelism always. It won't give 3 tasks to this executor and 1 task to this. Okay,
I see.
right. This is the third step. Now what is the fourth step? When the executors have done their work for the tasks, whatever you have asked for, let's say it's a count or something, at the end they will return the results to the driver, and the driver can show you the printed result. Whenever we do a show or count, this is what happens in behind. Okay,
Yes, I'm good. Yeah, I think I
okay,
got the architecture. Hello?
yeah, okay. uh all right, let's go. I have collected some pictorial things, so that will actually help. So let's just quickly recap what I have done. Okay, now this is someone who is doing the actual code. Okay, Now he has submitted a job and the code has gone to the driver, right? Now this driver, so this is the application, it gets the application code. This is whatever you have written in the program, like filter, whatever it is. Now this thing is getting converted into a DAG. So this is something what a DAG looks like, okay? So this is like read the JSON, do filter, then maybe a count, something like that. This is what it looks like. Now for every action called, you get a job. Okay? Now for every job, it divides it into different stages. Now this stage is actually related to shuffling, which we will discuss. Probably I'll give you an example which will make it clear. But for now, just remember that each job is divided into different stages. Now each stage is divided into different tasks. Now this task is actually given to different executors to execute, right? Sorry, right? So okay, until task, until this task, is it clear? I mean the overall flow.
Hello.
Yeah, so no, Jane. So I'm asking you that until here. So the driver gets the code, it converts to DAG. Now DAG is converted into stages, sorry, job stages and tasks. Okay. Until here, you have any doubt?
Until what?
I mean, you have any doubt over here?
No, I'm good.
Okay, sure. Now, what is the next step? Once you have you have calculated what all tasks you want to perform, the driver, basically driver will go to the cluster manager and it will ask, hey, cluster manager, I need to run some tasks. Can you allot me the resources? I mean, whatever resources this driver has calculated, right? Now, this cluster manager will see if the resources are available or not. And if the resources are available, it will say, yes, it is available. I will launch the needed. So cluster manager will go ahead and launch this launch this executors. Okay. Now the driver, this driver guy, I mean, this lady over here will actually send the tasks to the respective executors. Okay. Now, once the job is done, this worker, I mean, these executors will actually send the result back to the driver. Okay. So that was the architecture for this. I know there's a lot of things to take in. So maybe I have actually highlighted the keywords over here: drivers, Spark, context, DAG, resources. I just highlight this as well.
Yeah, I understand the basic concept, but then when in the Cloudera conference, there was things about, well, there was discussion about like Scala UDF and how like Python UDF is not PySpark UDF is not optimized in Spark and stuff like. I cannot grab that concept. So maybe in the next lesson, can you talk more about?
Sure. Okay. Actually, that will be more clear when we go to the shuffling part. So I have prepared something, but this is for the next session. Okay. So yeah. So what exactly happens is, okay, let me give small context, very small context, since we have some time left. Okay. Consider that you have 100 rows, right? Now, let's say 100 rows and you want to do a sum over it. So what happens is the driver will say, take this 25 rows, take this 25 rows and 25, right? Now let's say if you do a sum, it is okay because all this data is in a single machine. And when you do some operation like sum, what it will do is it will go through all these 25 rows and it will return just a single value, right? For this 25. Let's say this is summing up to maybe 200, this is 300. So basically at the end you will have 4 values, you just need to add it up, correct? But let's say you have something like join or maybe some other operation where you need all the data together in a machine. You cannot do a join with having, you cannot do a join where you have data in different machines, right? So in those kind of operations, you have to send the data from here to a single machine. Let's say you're sending to one, you have to send this data right here, right? Like this.
Oh,
Now, okay, so what is the problem over here? This is a network thing.
mm-hmm.
Now, what operation you would have, if the operation was in a single machine in the memory, it would have been done in milliseconds. But right now, this is similar to your something downloading from internet. So maybe it's going at 10 Gbps and you have a very big data set, and it will take you to transfer the data from here till here. It will take you maybe 5 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
right? So this is what is called as shuffling.
I see.
Okay, I mean, this is just a very abstract one. We'll actually go through the exact, we'll go to the exact value. I mean, I'll show you how shuffling is happening, why we do shuffling over here, how to handle it. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So yeah.
Yes. So let's save it for lesson 3 then. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yes.
yeah, I
Okay.
mean, that's
Yes.
it from my side for now.
Yes.
Just let
Awesome.
me know if you have any doubts. Just go through this particular slide and just try to maybe Google or maybe go through some definitions so that you can have it in a more clearer way. But yeah, this should be clear.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much, Sanket. I'm looking forward for the next week's session. Could you send me
Sure.
materials? Oh,
This
actually,
particular,
you put it on the Google Drive, so
yeah,
I'll share it with the class.
I'll just share it with you. Okay.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. I'll talk to you later.
Sure, sure.
Yeah, bye bye.
Bye.